Welcome, everyone, to the Nurse Converse podcast. My name is Holly Kapusinski, and I'll be your host for this episode. I'm a board-certified pediatric nurse practitioner and a board-certified nurse coach. My intention for our time together today is to create a safe space to spotlight issues, inspire, and share in our community of nursing. I'm so glad that you are joining me in this episode of Nurse Converse, where I will be sharing some of my journey as a holistic nurse and a nurse coach with you during this episode. I have been building skills, learning to bear witness to myself and others, to be present while also deepening my love for our nursing profession. Before we start, though, I would like to invite you to join me in a centering practice. Wherever you are right now, just bring your focus and attention to my voice, using all of your senses to notice where you are right now. Not changing anything, but paying attention to my voice. Begin to notice your breathing. Just noticing, allowing the air to move in and out of your chest area. Maybe breathing a little bit longer and deeper, finding a rhythm that's just right for you. Just noticing your breath, allowing the air to move into the chest and now out of the chest. Allow your breath to move freely, effortlessly, and easily in and out. Just notice the movement. One last breath into the chest and now out. Thank you for taking the time to do that exercise with me. I often get asked, what is a nurse coach? Oh, I know. You mean you coach other nurses? Well, I absolutely love these questions. It gives me an opportunity to share what I love about being a nurse and a nurse coach. I share that I love to be a nurse, someone who walks alongside another person, family, or community. And we explore possibilities for growth, healing, change, and fulfillment. We hear people use the word coach often, and when we hear that word, we often have many ideas that come to our mind. While there are aspects of being a nurse coach that are similar to coaching, such as cheering someone on to achieve something or providing guidance and instruction, these are not the only aspects of being a nurse coach. I learned this through my own experience. Let me just ask you a couple of questions. Have you had a vision for your life? Maybe you've made plans and worked really hard at getting to the end of those plans, or maybe you've been working on those plans and suddenly become sidetracked by other demands in your life, things that have come up in your life that you weren't necessarily expecting. Have you lost sight of what you wanted to do and maybe got into the habits of everyday life only to suddenly have a catastrophic event happen that changed everything. I did. I had a lot of episodes happen. And sometime in my mid-40s, one of the most serious that started my journey to being a nurse coach happened. I was diagnosed with a heart condition that I was told would require surgery. I was shocked and scared, and in that moment, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, but I did make a decision to change my life, my habits, and start over again. And over the course of several years of slowly working on habits, life change, and things I was doing, I did change my heart condition, and my cardiologist congratulated me. So, having done that, I actually came to understand that my nursing knowledge, experience, and education, helping myself and helping others who may have the same problem or be encountering the same issues, maybe I could do something that would marriage those things together. So I did. I combined my love for nursing, caring for others, my education, being a support. I allowed myself to bridge all of those things together and created my journey into nurse coaching. So how did I get there? How did I find nurse coaching? Well, I was seeking and Googling, and I happened to see a press release from the Institute for Functional Medicine, along with the Integrative Nurse Coaching Academy and Association. And I saw that they were offering a program that combined those two things together, getting at the root cause of issues and also using nurse coaching. So I took a chance and decided to look at what that would entail. So I Googled once again and I found the program. I looked for somebody who was close to me geographically that I could ask questions to, and found that person and had a conversation. What is a nurse coach? What do you do? And after about 10 to 15 minutes, I knew in my heart that I needed to trust what I was hearing and what I was feeling and take a leap and find out really what this was. The next thing that happened in the middle of all of this was another unexpected crisis or crises. What happened was an unexpected loss of my mother, who I had been taking care of. Something happened within my family, and there were radical changes that needed to occur. And for the first time in a long time, I decided to trust myself and move forward with this nurse coaching. I can honestly share with all of you that that decision has forever changed my life, and that becoming a nurse coach was the beginning of a healing journey for me, my family, and my career as a nurse. This journey started with healing me, learning to listen to myself again, learning to accept myself and see possibilities instead of concrete walls. I learned to look at life differently, to open myself to new ways of being, and to turn internal prisons that I had created for myself with no doors into windows. And I left feeling that I had new ideas and new choices and new possibilities. And I also learned that I was the only one who could change. And more importantly, I have no power to change anyone else as a nurse. or as a nurse coach. So I took a deep breath and I let go of being an expert, and I embraced mystery and the unknown, so that when I work with others, I don't have to have all the answers and I don't have to tell people what to do. I wasn't afraid anymore of disappointing others or making mistakes, only embracing who I was, and each day opening myself to being better, to being a better person, to being a better person for others and myself. So I left my certification program. I passed my certification board and I took the next big leap, which was to open up my own nurse coaching private practice, Life Cycle Balance, in 2018. And as I'm sure you can see behind me are my wheels, and that comes from my bike that I had for over 40 years that I purchased for myself when I was 16, lovingly known as Red. And when Red was on his last journey, rolling across the hills of New York for 400 miles on a trail with my daughter, I decided that it was time to upgrade and get a new bike. So I have a new bike that I lovingly call Unda Blue. And I have power-coded Red. And he is the symbol and the reminder to me that I can go through this journey of life and achieve things that I want. I encourage you to check out my blog post on my website and read a little bit more about Red and my history with Red. He's been a great partner and source of strength for me on my life journey. But in my personal and professional career, I really embrace this idea about walking alongside others as they discover who they want to be. And if you would like to learn more about being a nurse coach, please reach out to me. I love connecting with other people. You can find me on most social media platforms. I would love to connect with you, hear your story, and see if we are a good fit to walk together on this journey. I have only shared a fraction of my story with you during our time together today, but I hope it's enough to pique your interest and consider looking at alternative nursing paths. Being at the bedside is only one path in our nursing profession. There are many others. And I hope that you will take some time to explore on Nurse.org's platform all of the different resources they have to continuing your education, to learning more about different avenues for deepening your love in nursing and taking a different path. And I thank you all for joining me in that little brief story of my own path in nurse coaching. I would love to share more of it with you. Now that I have shared some of my story and how I pursued nurse coaching, I'd like to focus on each of you. Maybe you're considering a change within your career right now. Maybe you're interested in obtaining more education or wondering how you might find resources to help improve your well-being. Nurse.org's website has some wonderful resources, information, and wonderful articles on some of these topics. But I have actually invited one of my colleagues here to talk about something that I feel is really important. I referenced it in my first podcast episode entitled Navigating Life's Hurdles as a Nurse, Finding Emotional Strength and Motivation. There's a well-being toolkit entitled Promoting Nurse Health and Well-Being, available to all nurses in both English and Spanish, which you can find in the Resources tab on the American Holistic Nurses Association website. And I'm so excited about this toolkit that I wanted to invite my colleague, Wendy DeGraffenried, here today to talk about it. I wanted to bring up, like, how was it developed? Who is it for? And why might we need it right now? So let's just talk a little bit about the background of the toolkit before I introduce Wendy. And why is it urgently needed today? In 2019, the National Academies of Medicine released a report entitled Taking Action Against Clinical Burnout, a Systems Approach to Professional Well-Being. A 2022 follow-up report entitled The National Plan for Health Workforce Well-Being explores the scope, consequences, and contributing factors of clinical burnout. High rates of clinical burnout have a direct effect on patient safety and quality. And I would also say that it has a direct effect on those caring for patients. And one of the areas that we really wanted to work on was, how do we help healthcare providers mitigate stress and help them to look at themselves, to help them take care of themselves, and consider that they are just as important to take care of as those they are caring for. So I thought it would be kind of nice for us to talk about this toolkit and where you can find it and how it was developed and how we might get it out there so that more nurses know about it and we can start to utilize it and promote it. So Wendy DeGraffenried, she has a very complicated last name, somewhat like mine, so I know she won't be completely devastated since I didn't pronounce it right the first time. She is a colleague of mine on the American Holistic Nurses Association's clinical practice committee, and we address everything that has to do with holistic practice. So I've known Wendy for a couple of years now, and I was very excited to find out that she was one of the spearheads for this task force who actually helped to develop and address these reports that came out. So I'd like to just share a little bit about Wendy. She has a passion for people, nature, well-being, photography, and especially life. And that's one of the things that I absolutely adore about her. Every time I have an opportunity to engage with Wendy, I find that I light up just as much as she lights up everybody else. She's currently pursuing her advanced nursing degree and is a nationally certified school nurse. And I would like to share that in 2023, Wendy received the National Certified School Nurse of the Year from the National Board for Certification of School Nurses. And also recently, she's obtained two other important recognitions. One, just this year in June, actually. I can't forget that because my daughter was getting married and I didn't get to attend. So I was very sad about that. But my daughter getting married was important. So Wendy recently received the 2024 Charlotte McGuire Graduate Scholarship during the recent AHNA, or the American Holistic Nurses Association conference in Rochester, Minnesota. And she also just received the Matsu Health Foundation Scholarship. So congratulations, Wendy. I'm so excited that you have been blazing trails and just pursuing so much goodness in the world related to holistic nursing. And I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you, Holly. It's Delight to be here. Thank you for sharing a little bit about the toolkit and the journey that that committee took to create that. And then just a little bit about me. Um, it's a mirror, definitely, to hear someone tell you instead of read it in your bio. And so thank you. And I'm honored to be here today. Just delighted. So thank you.
Well, I know that this topic is important to both of us. And I think that it would be important, just first of all, just to share why it is important to us. Why is this particular um, avenue, why are we so passionate about nurse well-being and health? And maybe you could share a little bit about that and about why personally it's important to you.
Big question. I think as being an adjunct professor right now, my mind goes to the students and I teach second semester mental health practicum. And so they reflect to me often where I once was, which is in the depths of academia and learning what one professor called the nursing box. And we work really hard. And from that foundation, even before we get to nursing school, we have these innate helping abilities and helping desires. And it's through the formal education of becoming a registered nurse at no matter what level, whether it's a certification to graduate studies or advanced nurse practitioner, we all have this incredible desire and need. It really is a need to help. And so we're really helpers. But if we don't have a foundation of taking care of ourselves along the way, which that's really hard. Like we don't even learn how to take care of ourselves in a way that we are formalized in taking care of others. And so through this process and approaching 20 years in my practice, there have been many times through ups and downs of life where I realized that I'm actually in burnout. And it wasn't really truly I wasn't truly aware of this level of burnout until I started actually teaching it and looking at the literature. And that started about in 2018. I presented at the Trauma Sensitive Schools Conference in Washington, D.C., and it was just a delight to go there and be a part of that whole movement. And at that, as I studied and really looked at the literature and the books, the publications by the experts in the field, I realized, wow, like I'm actually burned out. But it took me studying about it and learning about it and to be able to really assess where I was. And I remember coming back from that and teachers asking, the question, how are you? And I decided at that point that because I knew I was in burnout, that I would say, actually, I'm in burnout recovery. I'm doing really well, but I'm working on this, this, and this. And it really opened up the conversation for people to say, wow, I'm really in burnout too. And that's outside of nursing. And so we have nurses who are burnt out, but we have professional colleagues that we work with, whether they're administrators, their organization, chief executives, we all can get burnt out. And so for me, as a helper, it's critically important that one, I know myself and I know how to take care of me. It's, like the old idiom, we got to fill our cup first before we fill others. And so that's a big part of the journey for me.
Yeah, I hear you talking about how important it is that we actually recognize that maybe we have forgotten to take care of ourselves. And that was a big part of my own journey, just recognizing that over the course of caring for a family, working professionally and just going through life, that juggling all those things, I had put myself last many, many times. And I had forgotten the importance of how do I bring myself to these situations in an important way and show up authentically. And then when I realize that I'm not taking care of myself, how can I recorrect the course? Right. So I hear you also talking about that. We need to help each other see that maybe there are some things happening in our lives that are not helping us to be the best versions of ourselves. So gently encouraging one another, right, to be there for one another. I had nobody telling me, that I was on the wrong path. I just had put on a great face and shared that I was okay and I'm going to march forward and I can do this. I'm going to just have a stiff upper lip and just keep on going forward. And all the while becoming more and more depleted until I really did feel like I had put myself inside of a box, as you're describing.
It's so hard to understand the implications of burnout, compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, unless you've actually read an article. And there are an astounding amount of articles, both academic level, research level, along the spectrum of nursing students. And in graduate studies, that's a big part of my research, is looking at what do we know about what nursing school does to nursing students. And I was interested to discover that there was a term that one article, and I don't have that article, but they talked about the ecology or the evolution of nursing burnout. And they actually identified that burnout starts in nursing school. And so that intrigues me. And so a lot of my work right now in graduate school and having access to some nursing students is to help them understand that nursing burnout can happen and that they can have a plan. And so I've created a beautiful module that begins in their second level of nursing school in the mental health, nurses caring for behavior and mental health disruptions. And so outside of learning about mental health and diagnoses and the medications that go with those scenarios and so forth, they actually are learning to take care of themselves. They learn to identify in different areas of what's important to them and set some goals. And then I introduce some evidence-based mindfulness visualization practices. And there are articles and studies that have been done that parallel or align with what I'm doing. And so this module that I have introduced in this class is evidence-based. And so it very much pleases me to know that when my students on a weekly self-reflection can say that they did this, or this, they might use 4-7-8, they might use square breathing, or any of the number of strategies that they're introduced to, that it helped them at clinical, or it helped them when they were feeling overwhelmed before they went into a test. And so this movement has begun, it is started, and it is moving forward. But what do we do about the nurses and the healthcare providers, all those who are in the helping industry? It isn't just nurses per se, but how can we introduce them to the concept of being burnt out, identifying it in the early stages, or knowing about it before they even get burnt out? And that's what this toolkit is all about. That's what we did to answer the call from the National Academy of Medicine when they had 15 key points that they really wanted to emphasize. We took those key points and we really tried to understand what they were asking. And then the 2 years from the inception of this committee to when we had it published was about 2.5 to 3 years. We went through COVID, and so it was difficult at times. For me, I can speak for myself as a school nurse. I had to take care of COVID-related policies and procedures, and so we were slow in some areas of getting the toolkit out as quickly as we wanted, but in the end, it was precisely what I had envisioned, and which was a toolkit, something that you could hold in your hand. You could print out a page and really look at one area, whether it was the organizational strategy piece or the self-care piece. And I look forward to sharing all of that as much as we can today in this podcast.
So I want to just address the actual topic of burnout. So that's the term that's going around, and you hear it on social networks and amongst nurses themselves. That's the big buzzword. And also self-care. That's the other buzzword. We're trying to slap, and a lot of nurses rightly think that this is, just a temporary stopgap, right? Well, I just need to care for myself more. What does that actually mean? Does that mean I go get a massage? Do I get, a manicure? Do I take some time off? There are all these ideas about what that actually means. And while those are great suggestions, and I would recommend them for anybody who enjoys those activities, what we're talking about has to go a little bit deeper. We're really talking about getting at the heart of what it means to be you, and how you may have lost a part of yourself in the doing activities and in the pressures of life and in taking care of other people. And that you have somehow lost sight of that part of yourself that really you resonate with, that makes you feel like a whole person. And so I really would like to talk about some of the things that really excite you about the toolkit, and also excite me because you brought up one of them. One is that they are things that you can hold in your hand and you can do briefly, so that they are, if practiced on a regular basis, really make a difference and call you back to yourself and remind you to be present and remind you to notice yourself and remind you to show up the best you can. So what are some of the pieces in the toolkit that really speak to you?
Yes. I want to interject something here real quick for simplicity's sake before we go into the toolkit. And I loved how you say, return back to us. How do we know? And one thing that through my experience of working with, educators, and I noticed it on the Nurse.org website as I was reviewing that this morning. There's an article title that I read that said how important hobbies are, what hobbies. It had something to do with hobbies, and hobbies is key. The toolkit, we'll get into that, talks about strategies and breathing techniques, and those are all great and fine. So the thing that I want to interject here is, what is it that you love to do that you haven't done in a long time? And so when I ask that question, sometimes people will say, well, I actually love to ride a bike. And I ask, how long has it been since you've been on a bike? Well, years. Okay. So then I move them through the process of seeing where their bike is, seeing how getting their bike out, seeing them get on the bike and just go for that bike ride. And when can they do that? When they get home from work today, when they are done preparing dinner, when is it that you're going to get on that bike? So that's one thing that I do with staff. And then two, it's simple things that we love to do, that we used to do, that we no longer do. And I recognize this in myself. We used to have 3 dogs, and so now we have 1. We've lost 2, and coming home from work, if I was too tired to go on a dog walk, that's how I recognized that I was tired and fatigued from work. Now that's pretty common, and all the surveys that I do when I do presentations is, what's one thing that you love to do that you haven't done in a long time? And so people can start to recognize the things that they love to do that they no longer do. And so if you can recognize that and then do it cognitively, then that will help prevent the inception of that burnout. The well-being toolkit identifies components of health and well-being, and it identifies the benefits and the outcomes for nurses individually, organizations, and then nations. The part that like your question was, what do I particularly like about this toolkit? I like how it's broken up into 2 sections. One section is, how does one cultivate organizational strategies? Because we have nurses in positions of leadership, and they are creating and implementing policies, procedures, and so forth. And so that was a big part of the toolkit. And there are 7 action items for that. And then we have the personal side, where one can cultivate a practice of wholeness. And as we look at those 2 different parts, the organizational strategies are things like an organizational assessment. How does one go about doing an organizational assessment, which is very important if you have influence, whether you're a charge nurse on a unit or an administrator in a hospital, or a nurse manager, or a nurse educator, a professor of nursing. Wherever you have leadership, it's important to do an organizational assessment. And so the toolkit has broken each of these strategies down to 1 page, because I, and like many people, if there's a flyer that you can look at and think about and read about and decide if you're going to do it or not, that was the direction that I wanted this toolkit to go, is print 1 page out so that you could look at it until it kind of set in, until you were ready to move with the suggestions on those strategy pages. So we have an organizational assessment. We have Code Lavender. We have team steps, integrative leadership, chief wellness team, the Schwartz rounds, which I'm looking at implementing for the school nurses in my school district, and then stress first aid. And so we're not going to dive into each of those and what they are, but you will have the opportunity to go find this toolkit and look at it and see what resonates with you and where you are in your nursing journey.
Yeah, I really like how you're bringing up the fact that, like, if you are a charge nurse or a nurse in a leadership position, I mean, sometimes you're overwhelmed as well, trying to balance both your responsibilities as a leader and also as somebody who is a mentor or an inspiration for those that you're leading. And so by just connecting with those around you that are important to you that you're working with and asking them, let's just try this, or what do you think about this strategy, or what are some of the thoughts that you have that you might be able to pull off of these suggestions. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly what's on the toolkit, right? I mean, you can use it as a springboard to come up with what suits you and your organization and what you're attempting to do. And I love that there was another part of that, Wendy, that I just struck me that, we don't all have the ability and time to devote to reinventing an entire wheel or creating a new plan, right? So having some ideas that you can take and open a discussion with other people, I think is really helpful. You also talked about global. So I think it's important to just bring up a little bit about how organizations can utilize the toolkit and present it to their organization to open dialogue for that, and also communities and, globally. How can we interact this globally?
Sure. So I want to, I'm going to answer that question, but I want us to come back to the personal strategy, cultivating a holistic personal practice, and maybe we can wrap up with that. As far as how we can amplify the toolkit, there's so many ways that we can look at the toolkit, not only apply it to our personal practices, our professional practices, and then organizational practices. So we can share these within our healthcare systems or wherever you are working. Nurse educators, professors at universities and schools of nursing can look at this and see how they can integrate this into their practice, whether they're writing curriculum or just presenting and teaching a class. I think that they can find benefit in this toolkit. Nurse coaches, of course, the personal aspect of this toolkit is exactly what a nurse coach would use to help facilitate and guide a client through understanding who they are, how they've gotten to where they are, what their burnout symptoms are, and then what's going to work for them for a plan. And then we have healthcare conferences and seminars. So several of my colleagues our colleagues on the practice committee have presented this toolkit to different American Holistic Nurses Association. I want to use the word teams, but that's not right. State organizations, they've presented there. And then as we have the opportunity to share the toolkit professionally, we can. For example, last year, 2023, I spoke at our Alaska School Nurses Association, and I did a presentation on holistic health, holistic life. And so within that presentation, I brought in the toolkit and I utilized the toolkit. So living a better life through holistic practices. We have medical and wellness blogs. For example, this blog we're sharing here, but there are more blogs and there are more publications that are happening. As a nursing student in the graduate program at University of Alaska in Anchorage, I have awesome opportunities to write academic papers, and in fact started my own blog this year just because I was doing presentations of a sort. I switched it up a little bit and turned it into a blog. But I now can reference this toolkit in my academic writing, which is super fun to see that on the reference page. Healthcare provider networks, corporate wellness programs, and there are a ton of corporate wellness programs that are formalized programs. Those people who are creating those programs can take a look at this toolkit and see how they can integrate some of the strategies. And then we have nurses associations, and then healthcare communities and forums. And so really, how do we amplify it? We amplify it wherever we are is going to be the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest path for nurses to share the toolkit. And so that depends on who you're hooked into, whether it's by state, by nation, or the global network. And I know with American Holistic Nurses Association, they are connected with some global organizations. The National Association for School Nurses also has connections to global associations where nurses can go over to different countries and do tours of different healthcare facilities. I haven't personally had that opportunity to do that, but I know that school nurses are very interested in what are nurses doing in different communities globally to help students of all cultures.
So this is a toolkit that, I can hear a lot of nurses who may be listening, maybe nursing students, like, I'm just nobody. Like, how would I even, you know, uh, who would I go to? I mean, I couldn't make a difference. I couldn't take this to anybody. And I would like to just offer that you have to start with yourself, right? So when we light ourselves up, when we ignite that little spark within ourselves and start to make changes within ourselves, then people start to notice. And when we feel that we are doing a little bit better, then we can be maybe braver to open up to somebody else or to share it. And we don't have to do it alone. I mean, we can find colleagues, people that are like-minded, people that really have a similar heart and a desire to make things better, and do it together. I really like the idea that, this is something that you could, give to your colleague who you're working with on the floor and say, I tried this and I just thought about you, and would you be interested in, trying this too with me? I need somebody to kind of like do this with and not feel alone.
So several things come to mind. First of all, we do have to have a felt experience inside our bodies and minds of what the strategies do for us. For example, if I were, and one of my go-to strategies is 4-7-8 breathing. And it's where we take inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and exhale through pursed lip breathing for 8 seconds. And what that does is it switches the nervous system. It's like a light switch, turning off fight, flight, freeze. And it puts us into rest, digest. So if you have a felt experience with 4-7-8 breathing and it's calmed you down like that, then it's going to be that much easier for you to share it with someone else. And in fact, it's funny that we bring this up. I'm thinking about the mindfulness license, and I wonder if I have one right here. I do. Isn't that funny? I don't know that you can see this, but it's a mindfulness license for resiliency. And so it's a business card, and it is sturdy, but it has 5 strategies on it. And when I was at the middle school, I created these because that was my first go-to, is calming the nervous system down before I tried anything else. And I always ask the kids permission, are you interested in trying to get rid of this headache in under 5 minutes? And they're like, yeah, sure. So there were strategies that we tried, and we always used a before and after assessment. But once they felt that experience, I said, now you have a license to be able to share this with others. And I encourage them to do. And then on the back, of course, you have assessing. So how much does it hurt, or how uncomfortable are you? And then do the strategy, whichever one you choose, and then reassess afterwards. And so we have to know what it feels like before we can share it with others. So you can be interested in this, and that's the just having an interest or even the curiosity. You can start with curiosity, like, I've never actually done any kind of formal breathing strategy. And so once you have a felt experience, then it might motivate you to do that. And then there's formal practices where you say, okay, I don't have anxiety right now, or I'm not in burnout right now, but I want to meditate 5 minutes a day because research says and shows. And then you can go from there. And that has been my journey for over 20 years, is having a felt experience of chi in my hands to recognize that I was more than my body. And so it was from that felt experience of pulling the chi. Some of our listeners may understand that. Pulling the chi is where you kind of can feel your aura or your energy field. So you pull it out and then push it back. And when I felt the little tingly or that magnet sensation, sometimes we call this magnet hands when I'm working with kids, because they know what that feels like, to repel and to pull magnets. And that's what it feels like. So once I felt that experience, I knew that I would be interested in studying this for the rest of my life. Additionally, I want to say that when I first got into trauma-sensitive care and mindfulness as a school nurse, the studies that I found talked about how educators, before they could bring mindfulness into the classroom, and there's some phenomenal programs specifically for that mindfulness in the classroom. I could go on and on about how awesome they are, but they talk about how the articles talk about how in order for a teacher to bring those types of strategies and programs into their classroom, that they actually have to have that felt experience. They have to know that it works, because that's what brings the passion or the dedication to their students and introducing it to their students. And so it's going to be the same way, Holly, with nurses, as educators, as teachers, as coaches, as administrators. We have to know how that feels and why that's going to be important. And that's what really motivates me, is because outside of the articles, and there are so many articles, academic research studies that show how integrating either mindfulness or body awareness or visualization, meditation, how that calms the nervous system, that we have to have that felt experience. So yes, I encourage, and I'm going to point to the toolkit now, the holistic personal practice. It enhances self-care. So when you go to that, there are hyperlinks on a one-page resource, and I'm so proud of this resource page, because you can upload it on the web or download it as a PDF, and once you have that, you can click on that. So the hyperlink will take you to how to do that specific strategy, or it'll take you to an assessment. So if you've never done an assessment like the professional quality of life, I recommend that that's the first thing that any practitioner of mindfulness do, is go see where you are. Go see if there's some burnout, and then pick something. And so the one page, the resources, and it's specifically called integrative therapies. So pick something. If you're already doing yoga and you haven't done yoga in a long time, that's one. If you do massage therapy and you haven't been to a massage therapist for a long time, schedule your appointment. Acupuncture. So it goes on and on. It doesn't have to just be like breathing or meditation strategies. It can be Tai Chi. It can be Qigong, which I've practiced for 20 years or more. And I know how to pull from that experience when I need to stand up from my desk, do some mixing fire and water, 2 hands hold up the sky, and in 5 or 8 minutes, I'm feeling better, grounded, given my brain a break, and ready to get back to work, right? So
Wow.
I can just talk forever about each of these. The other thing that I want to point to specifically is that the American Holistic Nurses Association has an integrative healing arts program. And so if you're curious about what that looks like, or you have felt like the need to go more holistic, that is going to be the program for you. And there is an entire page for that. And what that will do is it will link you to all the practices of practicing holistic nursing. And basically, it's everything that we know as nurses, but adding on, say, some spiritual care or some energetic care. And we are energetic beings. We forget that. But it going through a program is a formal way of introducing yourself to therapeutic practices.
Wow. I just really think that this has been wonderful to bring the toolkit to light. And I hope that everybody will take an opportunity to go and find the toolkit. You could find it on the American Holistic Nurses Association website under resources. You can also find out what holistic nursing is. And Wendy and I have talked about that a lot, both personally and professionally, and how we use that within our practices. Just a couple of key takeaways that I think are really important. It starts with desire and curiosity. You sometimes have to become so sick and tired of being sick and tired of feeling overwhelmed and starting to question what might be different. How might I be different? How might my life be different? What can I do in order to bring some of that difference to light? Engaging in some of that reflective thought about who do I want to be? What have I lost within myself and how can I regain that? And then starting small, just piquing your curiosity and trying one thing. Just reading through that list and picking one thing and then asking a colleague or somebody that you care about to do it with you so that you're not doing it alone. And building upon each of those so that you reignite that spark and that light within yourself. I know that my life has forever changed just by integrating some of these practices in my daily life. And I'm much more aware now when I start to fall into a trap of not engaging in being full, so to speak. So I start to notice where I'm depleted and where I can take turns bringing more life and energy into my life. And as all of you can see, it's one of those ways is through my bike. I absolutely love cycling, and it kind of reinvigorates everything about my being. So thank you, Wendy, for being here. Could you just share a little bit about how people can find you? And then we'll close with a quote and a couple of resources.
Thank you, Holly, for reviewing all of the valuable ways that we can embrace and bring mindfulness and self-care into our lives. It is the simple things. I can be reached. First of all, I want to point to ahna.org. And then if you would like to email them, it's info@ahna.org. And then I can be reached through my website and an email. And you can find me on YouTube at The Holistic School Nurse. I'm also on Facebook with that same handle. My email address is wendyd@pathoftheheartinc.com. Nurse.com. That's where I do all of my creative endeavors. There's a lot more than just mindfulness. That's how I take care of myself. So I'd love to hear from anyone who is interested in developing a holistic self-care practice. I'm open to having that dialogue. And I think that I got everything. Thank you, Holly. I appreciate the opportunity. If you have any questions about this toolkit, please email AHNA or me directly.
Yes, and I'd like to just give a brief thank you to all of the task members from AHNA Practice Committee who worked so diligently to create this and to bring it to fruition. It's a beautiful resource, and I really hope that all nurses take an opportunity to share it, to look at it, and to envision how it might help themselves. So as we close our time together, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to this podcast episode. And if you really liked it, I would love it if you would subscribe to Nurse Converse, give us a thumbs up. And also, if you enjoy hearing me, please put in the comment my name and you would like to hear more from me. And again, go to Nurse.org's website and check out all of the many resources that they have. There's so much there. We also have additional podcast episodes that are very wonderful. So I'd like to close with my favorite quote as we end our time together and wish all of you, my colleagues out there listening, wellness, health, and well-being. And to speak from St. Francis of Assisi, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. And each of you are a candle with a light to shine brightly in the world. So may we live in peace and harmony today. May we live in love and compassion today. May we live in truth, beauty, and justice today. From my heart to yours, I hold you there. Thank you for joining me and spending some of your time here with us.